This video contains huge spoilers for Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Please don't watch this video until you've played the game pretty much the whole way through. I was going to chuck up the pre-story to Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and talk about how all of the flashbacks and themes that we see in the teardrop memories, how they are contradictory to what we know about the founding years of Hyrule as seen in Skyward Sword, the first game in the timeline. The Zelda timeline has always been confusing, but actually even more so now. We have Ganondorf turning into the Demon King, accessing that form. However, didn't Demise set the curse that set off Ganondorf? If that's true, that means that, of course, the events of Skyward Sword happen before the pre-story of Tears of the Kingdom. But hang on, in Tears of the Kingdom, Raru is the last of the Zonai, and Queen Sonia talks about how Zelda seems to share some kind of blood connection with them, suggesting that they are, of course, ancestors. And that would make sense, because Zelda's father in Skyward Sword is Gaebora, and Gabora is the name of the owl in Ocarina of Time that is the owl form of Raru, the Sage of Light, suggesting that Raru in Tears of the Kingdom is the ancestor to Zelda, but that would mean that the pre-story of Tears of the Kingdom happens before Skyward Sword. It all gets very confusing. There are a number of ways, and I encourage you in the comments down below, of course, to rectify these various canonical points. And again, I remind everyone that this is the Legend of Zelda, and this channel is Absurd Zelda Theories. But I've got a theory, an order of events that I think explains perfectly both Skyward Sword and most of it all still being canon, with nothing being retconned in particular, and the pre-story to Tears of the Kingdom still making sense. So here we go. Let me run through the origin story of Hyrule. At the very beginning, there was nothing. A swirling vortex of chaos. We see this on Ocarina of Time as the Great Deku Tree describes to Link about the three golden goddesses, Nehru, Faeror, and Din. They create life and spirit, they create the earth. In terms of life, they perhaps create a form of biological life that reproduces, with Goron, Zora, Rito, and Hylians and Gerudo all stemming from the same place. But above them all, there is a race closer to the gods than any other. Some sort of, you could consider them small gods, like little g small gods. These are a species known as the Zonai. They're closer to the gods than the Hylians. And the Zonai aren't power hungry. They are already micro gods themselves, so they have everything they need. It is my belief that over thousands of years they foster the species of Hyrule, helping them with their incredible technology. They have technology that allows their islands to reside in the sky while they watch from above. They have technology that is anti-gravity and can even manipulate time itself. It is they who have had bestowed upon them the Tears of the Kingdom, as well as possibly the Triforce. It seems likely that King Raru will know where the Triforce is sealed away. But I digress. Over thousands and thousands of years, the races of Hyrule evolve and change. I mentioned in my Zora video how the races of Hyrule are just that, they're races. They're not different species, which means they can reproduce with one another. And this is demonstrated right here with the Zonai, who slowly but surely begin to just die out, with Raru and Minoru being considered the last of their kind. So in this final time of the Zonai, thousands of years already into our story, takes a Hylian wife known as Sonia. Sonia is a word, by the way, that means wisdom, which instantly gives her a connection to Zelda, and she mentions when she meets Zelda for the first time that Zelda shares a blood connection. She is a descendant of theirs, meaning that Raru and Sonia have a child that we don't see in Tears of the Kingdom. They must do, to allow for all future Zeldas to be born. At this time, the various races of Hyrules already have customs that have been repeating for generations. Every 100 years, a male is born into the Gerudo, and when that happens, that male is given kingly status, given the kingdom by birthright. This, in this time, of course, is Ganondorf. And Raru, with his Hylian wife and the work of the Zonai mostly complete, decides it's time to unify the races and creates the kingdom of Hyrule. Gorons, Rito, Zora, and Gerudo are attempted to be brought into the fold, but the Gerudo don't follow suit as easy as the others. Ganondorf pretends to be loyal, but sees the power that the Zonai have hidden. If only Ganondorf could have that power for himself, for his people. It seems likely that even he and the ancient Gerudo sage were in disagreement about the future of the kingdom. At this time, future Zelda appears from Tears of the Kingdom and warns of an evil in the future, warns of Ganondorf, and Raru recognizes the threat that Ganondorf is. He has evil in his heart and desire in his eyes, and with it he makes moves and kills Queen Sonia. He takes her tear and transforms. He becomes the Demon King. Now, the observant among you may have recognized that I haven't yet mentioned Demise, and that's because I don't think Demise actually exists yet. I'm going to get to that, and I promise you it's going to make sense. At the very minimum, this channel is called Absurd Zelda Theories. You know why you subscribed. It is this Demon King who brings Moblin and Hinox and Lynels into the world. It is this Demon King that begins to terrorize Hyrule for the first time. And Raru knows what he must do. Raru places a seal on this Demon King, locking him away, but the Demon King knows, as does Raru, that eventually this seal will wear off. Raru taunts the Demon King by telling him one day a hero called Link will come to stop him and he should remember that name. So the Demon King makes plans. You'll notice that in Tears of the Kingdom, when the Demon King wakes up, it's not actually the Demon King, it's just Ganondorf. Even though he was locked away in one form, he comes back in his prior form of the original Ganondorf. So what gives? What happened to his Demon King spirit? Yes, he accesses it later on in battle by using the tear, but where did it go in the meantime? Ganondorf is a man who can split his spirit into multiple entities. Throughout the series, we've seen Phantom Ganons and Puppet Ganons, Beast Form Ganons, Calamity Ganons, and all of them are separate from Ganondorf the human. He seems to be able to resurrect and come back in these various different forms, all of which he's trying to manifest himself back into reality so that he can finally rule over Hyrule. And so, around 1,000 years after the initial sealing, that Demon King spirit leaves the body of Ganondorf and becomes Demise. You can see where the tear has been removed from his head, where there is now just a cross, a gaping sort of white chasm on his face. He returns to the surface world and reawakens his moblins and armies from a chasm where they've been sleeping within the earth. So at this point, where are the Hylians? And where are the royal family? Well, after the fall of Raru and the other sages, it is my belief that Minoru took care of their child. The child, of course, being Hylia. Hylia, as in the goddess Hylia. I don't think Hylia was truly a goddess, or again, she was a goddess with a small g. She was half Zonai, half Hylian, the last of her own kind. You see, at the very beginning of Tears of the Kingdom, Zelda refers to the fact that the Zonai were thought of as being gods themselves, or closer to the gods than any other species. I believe that's the role that Hylia has in the series, and that Hylia is the child of Raru and Sonia. Minoru looks after her and brings about a clan of people, the Sheikah, who will be duty-bound to look after the descendants of her family for the rest of time. She is half Zonai, so she's able to live an incredibly long time, and it is she who will have to fight the Demon King and, of course, take the remaining Hyruleans into the sky and creates the community of Skyloft. She knows she must keep the Triforce away from the Demon King Demise, and Demise becomes sealed in the sealed grounds. This is the pre-story to Skyward Sword. Now, we do know that Hylia reincarnated herself as a Hylian, as Zelda, but I'm not sure that it is that straightforward. I actually think that might just be, again, one of those things that legend got a little bit wrong. Instead, given that her father was full Zonai and her mother was Hylian, she is now half Zonai, half Hylian. But of course, if she has children with another Hylian, then her children are quarter Zonai. After that, 1/8. After that, 1/16. After that, 1/32. Generations later, there is no Zonai left in the bloodline. They are just considered Hylian. And her descendant in Skyloft is the leader of Skyloft, Gabora, the headmaster of the Knights Academy, where they train knights for the obvious reason of they don't even know why they're doing it, but it's to fight against demons one day if they should ever return. Gabora is, of course, the father of Zelda, and, of course, the name Gabora ties into Gabora, the owl from Ocarina of Time, which is the sort of owl form of Raru in that game, another descendant of this same bloodline. It actually stands to reason that in Ocarina of Time, Raru and Zelda are probably related. I digress. The events of Skyward Sword happen, and of course at the very end of the game, Girahim goes back to a time when Demise's spirit was in fact separate from the body of Ganondorf sealed underground, and was roaming as its own entity, a commander of the Moblin army of the surface world. Of course, the Link of this game awakens the Master Sword from the Goddess Sword, likely created with the help of Minoru, who helped Hylia in creating this sword. Minoru knew about the Master Sword, she was told by Zelda. Additionally, the ability to transfer her spirit into the Purapad might have helped her in creating the sword, where Fi's spirit is put into the Master Sword. Anyway, using the newly awakened Master Sword, and of course with the power of the Triforce, Link fights against Demise, and Demise in his last moment places a curse that an incarnation of his hatred will pursue them over the generations. So, despite the fact there is the body of the original Ganondorf underground, new Ganondorfs can be born into the world, and they are all driven by this hatred, by the evil, power-hungry curse of Demise. This is where the various Legends of Zelda stories happen in the timeline. And these stories, of course, all happen over tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of years. Raru's seal keeping Ganondorf sealed away underground for all that time. But eventually Raru's seal weakens, Ganondorf becomes stronger, the Calamity happens, Breath of the Wild happens. Link, of course, fights against the Calamity Ganon, and then at the very beginning of Tears of the Kingdom, they find themselves, Link and Zelda that is, in this underground chamber, learning about this ancient war from the time of the founding of Hyrule. The story has gone full circle, much like the logo of Tears of the Kingdom, as they find themselves face to face with the original Ganondorf. What's worse is using this last remaining tear, Ganondorf is able to reawaken the Demon King spirit from within inside him. Of course, this all explains why Ganondorf in this game, he's not very two-dimensional, not like Ganondorf as he appeared in, say, Wind Waker, where he actually cares about the Gerudo people. This Ganondorf simply believes that the world should be shrouded in darkness. He reawakens himself and powers himself back up as Ganondorf the human, before using the power of the tear to reawaken the Demon King form from within inside himself. It's possible this means that the cycle of hatred will continue after Tears of the Kingdom. Or perhaps the complete destruction of Ganondorf at the end of the game means this cycle of violence is finally over. But that's just my theory and how I explain the order of events. When I put the origin story of Skyward Sword side by side with Tears of the Kingdom's founding of Hyrule flashback scenes, it was actually really hard to make a lot of these things make sense. And so to me it makes sense that actually the Demon King was born from Ganondorf, alongside the birth of all of the various moblins and demons across the world of Hyrule. And if you like this absurd Zelda theory, please consider becoming a member. It's never expected but always appreciated, and helps me in creating more absurd Zelda theories.